Hello, good morning. My name is Tim Logan. I'm with Pantera. We're very pleased to be a sponsor today. Briefly, I wanted to tell you that for more than 4 decades, Pantera has set the standard for innovative plan-giving marketing solutions and also for top-quality customer service. We serve thousands of charities, hospitals, and educational institutions throughout the United States. Some of you may know about us and about Pantera. We were founded by the renowned plan-giving expert, consultant, and pioneer Andre Danikian. As of 2010, his daughter Claudine Danikian has directed the company and has successfully developed cutting-edge strategies, pioneering industry-changing research and ensuring that we remain the leading marketing firm of the plan-giving industry. And I invite you to stop by our table and pick up some of the results of our research programs. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker this morning for our session Beyond the Strategic Plan, the Power of Personal Touch in Donor Engagement. Our speaker this morning is the Chief Development Officer at Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. She's committed to joyfully creating a culture of giving, gratitude, and engagement to transform the health and welfare in the community that she and they serve. Previously, she served as Director of International Giving and Engagement at the College of Literature, Science, and Arts, spearheading the college's fundraising efforts outside the United States at the University of Michigan. Tina has also worked for the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, Ukraine, the United States Mission to the United Nations in Geneva, the Club de Madrid in Madrid, Spain, and for the State Department in Washington, D.C. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's degree in public policy, and a master's degree in higher education with a focus on philanthropy, advancement, and development, all from the University of Michigan. Please join me in welcoming our speaker this morning, Tina Sula.
Good morning, everybody. There we go. So I'm so grateful to be here with all of you guys today. And I guess I'd like to share a quote with you. I was writing a thank you card to a donor. And every time I write a thank you card on our West Bloomfield Hospital stationery, the quote says, "The act of giving is the soul of living." So I reflect on that every time I see it, and I reflect on how grateful I am to help donors find meaning in their lives through their giving. And that's what we do. That is our why, or that's what I found to be my why. So I'm excited to follow Lonnie because I want us to be on that upper right quadrant in terms of the relationships that we build with our donors. So before I go to the next slide, the question that I'm often asked is, what is the X for? So is anyone curious to know? Okay, so my dad's name is Jamal, and XH in Albania, so I'm Albanian, is J. So hence the X. So that's sort of the tradition and the culture that we have in Albania. Our middle names are usually our father's name. So I wanted to share that with all of you because every time I give a donor a business card or I share anything electronically, it's, tell me about that X. So now you know. So you guys heard a little bit about me. So I've been in development for 10 years, and like I shared, my why is to connect people to each other and to other organizations so they can live out their lives and their purposes. So I'm really lucky that I've been doing that for the past 10 years. And most of us sort of say, oh, I just fell into fundraising. But because building relationships is about revealing our authentic selves, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into development. So I was a scholarship student at the University of Michigan, and I was asked to give a speech at the donor recognition dinner. The person sitting next to me was the head of development. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what that meant. As a poli-sci major, I thought development was, international development, where we go to third world countries and we help them develop. But she and I chatted a little bit, and she asked me, what are you doing after graduation? So what I shared with her were 2 things. I wanted to become an immigration attorney, and I wanted to become the future U.S. ambassador to Albania. But I said, I worked for the State Department, and I don't want to be a foreign service officer. So after my remarks, and after I come back to my seat, she gives me her business card and says, well, if you want to be an ambassador, you have to learn how to raise money, and I'm going to teach you how. So that person is Peggy Burns. She's a former head of development for the College of LSA, And she's the person that gave me the opportunities that I've had in the past 10 years. And she's also the reason I moved to Henry Ford and the reason why I'm the head of development at Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. So another thing that I love, it's a way for me to give back to the University of Michigan, is that I teach networking. So I know Lonnie talked about the importance of relationships. And networking, as you guys know, is really all about building meaningful relationships. So what I really teach my students is to take that a step further, because you can have the most meaningful relationship, but if you don't make an ask, then are you really advancing what it is that you want to pursue? And I believe that people really want to help, but if we don't ask them, they're not going to guess what we want or what we need. So that's something that I love, and I also love that I get to help other students figure out their whys. I am married to a Beaumont cardiologist, so it's really a house divided. You know, you have a Henry Ford fundraiser and a Beaumont doctor. We have a 15-month-old daughter. Her name is Zara. And I love to travel, I love to read, and I love to eat in Detroit. So Friday nights are date nights without the baby, and so that's something that we do. And I believe that all gift officers should also be philanthropists in their own right, and at various monetary gifts. So some of the things that I'm passionate about are international fellowships at U of M, because international experiences as a student changed my life. So that's something that I want to continue supporting, because I know the power of that. We have a fund at Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital called the Random Acts of Kindness Fund. So this particular fund helps employees with urgent needs. Because when you are a hospital employee and you're literally saving lives, if you can't pay your water bill, that's what's on your mind, as opposed to how do I take care of this patient. So that's a fund that I'm really proud to have worked with a donor to start, and something that I support myself. And as an Albanian American, I'm on the board of the Gjesh Kasioti Scholarship Fund, so we help Albanian American students go to college. So this is just a little bit about me, so you guys know where I'm coming from. So as I was preparing for this presentation, I had to ask myself a question, and that question is, what do donors want from us and from our organizations? So I'll give you guys a minute or so to really to reflect a little bit on that, because as fundraisers, I think we're so busy doing and we're so busy running around that I don't think we have much time to reflect. So I really wanted to use our time together to do a little bit of reflecting. So what do donors want from you and your organizations? And if anybody would like to share, please raise your hand so we can come with the microphone.
They want to feel needed, and they want to feel like they're making a difference.
Thank you. Anybody else? Behind you, Diane.
In addition, they want to feel appreciated.
Anybody else? So after doing my own reflection, these are the things that I put together. So I believe that at the end of the day, donors want to make a difference. It's a reason why they get involved. They have a why, and they want to make a philanthropic investment to advance that why. I also believe that donors want to feel like insiders with the organization. When you make a philanthropic investment, it's, hey, I'm not just going to write a check and then move on. There's a reason for that gift. And it's also really important that, yes, they have a relationship with you as the gift officer, because we're those connectors, but they also want to learn as much as possible what's going inside and get to know multiple stakeholders. So it's just not me thanking them, or it's not just me asking them to get involved, but they get it from many people in the organization. So as gift officers, or as a gift officer in my own hospital, building internal relationships was the key to success for me in the first couple of years. Because we can go and have donor lunches, and I think that's something we're accused of as gift officers. Oh, you guys just go have lunch with donors. But most people don't see the bottom of the iceberg, which is the relationships that we build internally, trying to understand what is it that the needs of the institution are and how we're going to advance those strategic plans. So those things are like key to us being successful. Because when Lonnie mentioned that sometimes you just have to wing it and make an ass, because that's just how the conversation goes. The more you know internally, the better you can be to advance your organization's mission. They want to feel valued and respected. I think all of these really talk about the golden rule, like treat others like you want to be treated. But how many times do you have a donor that chases, the gift officer to get information? How many times do you have a donor saying, well, what happened with my gift? Those are the things that we want to prevent. Like, we want to be there for the donor, and we do want to make the donor feel really good, not only about their philanthropic investment, but their loyalty and their partnership with the organization. They come to us because they have these goals for their philanthropic dollars. They want to make a difference through our organization. So it's really not about us, it's about the donor and what they want to achieve. The fourth one is that donors want to feel understood. And as I was reflecting on this particular piece, I was thinking about my relationship with my husband. So I'm the oldest child, he's an only child, we're all very opinionated, and sometimes we do this. So what I've learned in my 5 years is at the end of the day, we just want to be understood. It's not about getting your way or getting my way, but is it like, do you understand me? I was in France a couple of weeks ago. I was doing this program at INSEAD Business School on innovating health for tomorrow, and I had an opportunity to connect with one of my former donors. And I asked him, because he supports many organizations internationally, and I said, well, tell me about your relationship with this particular organization. He said, oh my gosh, Tina, I dread having a conversation with that gift officer. That person just doesn't understand what my family and I want to do with our money. It just seems that all he wants is a bigger gift. And as someone who's very protective of our profession, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what can I do to change the situation? Like, can I pull this person aside? And I realize I'm not going to be in this country to even have a conversation with a person. But once again, it's not about the organization. It's not about me as the fundraiser. But are we really listening to what the donor's passions, the donor's interest, the donor's situation at that time is? Because that donor is still meeting with you, even after they're saying, oh gosh, like, that's just not my favorite conversation to have. They really care about the organization. So that's something I also had to learn. That's, once again, it's not about me. So what is it that I can do to make that donor feel really good? And what can I do to make the institution move forward? So I can't stress that enough. And then I think packaging all of these 4 things together, they want a special, memorable experience. And with a special, memorable experience piece, that's the point of why I'm here today. Like, how can we create more meaningful and more special experiences where the donor not only is proud of the impact of their gift, but they feel proud of the relationship with the organization. So 2 goals: to share ideas on what we can do as gift officers to win the hearts and minds of our donors, and then to work on creating habits that help build donor trust. So I guess to put it simply, how do we steward the donor as opposed to just thinking about, oh, I need a stewardship report and just stewarding the gift? And the more we can steward the donor, the more we can be on that upper right quadrant, and the more that comfortable we can be in understanding the donor. Because in a perfect world, at least for me, I would never want to ask for money. I want to ask people to make a difference. And if we know our donors, if we know their passions, then all we have to say is, you've told me that you're passionate about this project. May I share a proposal with you so you can see how we can turn that vision of yours into reality. And then the rest just becomes numbers. That becomes an accounting conversation. But the most important piece of that is, what do they want to accomplish with their money in a meaningful way? How do they want to change the world? So, we have an exercise. So how many of you are sitting next to someone you know? Okay, so I wouldn't be a networking lecturer if I didn't agree that you have to go find somebody new. So move around. Introduce yourself to a new person. And then please share an experience with your new partner where somebody did something for you and you felt like $1 million. And then I have some reflection and discussion questions for you. I think you guys can read those. One more minute. I'm sorry to interrupt. Will you mind passing the microphone? We'll have some people reflect on this.
Oh, not at all.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Or not. Thank you. I love the joy and energy. So Diane has the microphone. Would anybody like to share their experience or experience that meant something to them? Bob, how about you? Only a few.
Actually, I will share Priscilla's because she talked to me about hers at some length. And what she talked about was somebody who she was connected with in a personal way, but also in a sort of an interactive professional, her Pilates instructor, but somebody who she knew in another way. And she expressed to her at one time, just in conversation, something that was on her mind about her son and his ambitions. And the response that this instructor had was an independent desire to influence and help, and actually did something to facilitate, without being asked to do just that, but facilitated an ambition for her son. And that made Priscilla feel really like $1 million because she was heard, even though she wasn't shouting. and because it was just the beat of her heart.
Yeah, thank you for sharing Priscilla's story. I felt it. I felt it. Does anyone else would like to share? Thank you.
Mary shared with me an amazing story, which I think as development professionals we can all appreciate. She had a few donors donate in her name. So that's incredible.
Thank you for sharing that. Way to go, Mary. Anybody else? Okay, well, we can go to the next slide. So after doing my own reflecting, of course, I went to the Google, as my colleague at work calls it, for good ideas. And Veritas Group, I'm sure many of you have heard of that organization, had this to say. So maybe to even analyze your own story, do you feel that all of those things were met?
Our relationship, although we know each other a long time, she kicks me every Thursday morning. It gives me pain. But yes, I mean, we spend a lot of time in our business doing for others. It's how,
Yes.
you know, we explained about. And it was honestly hard for me to think about. Can you use the microphone? Oh, I'm sorry.
Diane.
I was just saying that what I discovered in the moment of focusing on the question that Tina had asked is that in our business, we spend so much time thinking about doing for others. That's how I view it. I'm in the healthcare arena as well. Your competitor, who must not be named, I found it was really a paradigm shift for me to start to think about myself. So when she puts this up, yes, I have to say, you know, the honesty I had in that moment, feeling involved, and certainly I made a difference in my son's life, and by that, my life. Yeah, it was a good thing.
Anybody else have any reflections they want to share? I believe in sharing. Bless you.
To echo Priscilla's thoughts, are that in my case, I was sort of shocked. I was completely shocked in that our job is to stay in the background to make sort of magic out front, to not look like, we're too involved. So when gifts were made in my honor and I was not told, I thought, boy, that's sort of the best gift they could have ever given me. They had said thank you. It's great to get thank yous from donors when they give you a gift, your institution a gift. But the trust building there, I knew I had conquered. There was no question in my mind once I knew that they would make a gift like that. So.
I think that, I mean, for me, this is the golden rule. I mean, it's as simple as that. Treat others like you want to be treated, and things will happen. It's hard work to actually follow the golden rule. I mean, we have things coming at us. I mean, just being here today, imagine the amount of emails that you're going to have to go home to. Or hopefully maybe you won't respond to those emails tonight or tomorrow morning. I mean, we're just in that kind of business. But when you try to find ways to treat everybody meaningfully in a positive way, the way you would want to treat your family and the way you want to treat others, meaningful relationships build. I took some notes when Lonnie was talking, and I know for the involvement piece, the solicitation readiness index that he mentioned. I mean, so some of the things that I really love about what he said is that how can we fight for the donor? And I love the example. So I'm the fundraiser that even if somebody's ready to hand me $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, I say, I appreciate that you trust me in the organization, but we don't know if what you want to accomplish could actually be accomplished. So how about you give me the money, for 3 years, whatever it takes every year to make that project happen, And then year 3, I come to you and say, hey, this is where we at, this is what we learned, this is how we can take it forward. Because then when I go year 3 and say, let's have a conversation about that endowment, you know, the organization and I have built trust where it's, wow, yes, I love the difference that I'm making, I want to take it to the next step. But imagine, you know, taking a $5 million gift and then it ends up in an account for 5 years. It happens. I mean, this stuff happens. Or imagine that the person who's, you know, the responsible for that gift doesn't do what the donor wanted or doesn't have the impact the donor wanted. Then you have to have a conversation of, do we return the money? Do we have to find another way to do the money? And, you know, the donor honesty and trust piece, you know, we don't have it anymore. I am trying to work with a donor that he had a bad experience with the organization. It happened before I got there. And when I asked to have a meeting, he said, I'm just not ready to have a conversation. So I could either drop it completely, or I can say, I really care about you as a donor and what you want to accomplish with your money and how you want to transform your community and actually try to rebuild trust. So I actually wrote a handwritten note, and I said, this is what's going on in the area that you're passionate about, and it's okay if you don't respond to me. I'm going to continue to send you information because my goal is to rebuild trust. It might happen, it might not, but I'm willing to bet that in today's society, people value that. And I've also learned that a handwritten note goes a long way because most people don't send them anymore. But these are some of the things that I've started to think about, you know, as a fundraiser. Another note that I had is, you know, don't get too close to the donor. I think that's what Lonnie hinted at or mentioned. It took me a long time to be comfortable with the word I am a fundraiser, because I transitioned from a donor engagement role to being a major gifts officer. You know, so to say I am a fundraiser, I mean, it took me 6 months to be proud of that. And I am proud of that because what we can do is transformational. I mean, we bring people together who have passions and resources with needs, and because of us, things happen. Maybe it would have happened eventually, but gift officers make it happen faster. So sometimes I don't think we realize how powerful, you know, our work is and how important it is to changing the world. And I guess one final comment that I wanted to make regarding what Lonnie mentioned, the passionate listening. It's really hard to be a compassionate listener, especially if it's a topic that does not interest you at all. But I think all of us were raised to be respectful, and just asking people about why they're passionate and what it means to them. I think curiosity comes, and I think as gift officers, you know, if we don't have curiosity, we're probably not going to be the best we can be at our jobs. And sometimes I've found from my experiences that even if it is something that oh my gosh, like I cannot believe I'm going to talk about this, I always learn something. And it's that learning that really inspires me, and I think makes me better at building relationships, and it makes me, you know, a better person overall. So the question is, how do we make every donor feel like $1 million? And I wanted to share some of the things that I do. So I mentioned earlier that I love to read. It's really hard with a 15-month-old, so I do podcasts now. But when I'm on a plane or, you know, waiting for a meeting, if I got there early, because sometimes traffic is good, I like to read. And I give you these examples because the compassionate listening is a really key part in all of that. So the book, 100 Places to See Before You Die, I was meeting with a donor, and he shared with me that he's at that stage where he's going to be thinking about retirement. So he said, oh, my wife and I are going to get into a car and drive all across America, pick up that book, and then stop at those places. And I thought it was how cool that he's going to, you know, have the opportunity to do that. So when I got to my office, I went on Amazon, I ordered the book, and I sent it to him. Next time I meet with him, he says, Tina, I think of you every day because your book is in my coffee table. At this point, smaller organization might say, well, I don't have a budget to, buy gifts. That's okay, because, you can go look at that book at the library, you can go online, and then you can send snippets, because copy and paste of a link is free. But when somebody says, hey, I thought of you, it's really powerful. And it's, hey, I thought of you just because, not, oh, I have some ulterior motive, that I want to accomplish with this. So I try to do meaningful things to show the donors that I'm listening, that I'm understanding them to the best of my ability, as much as I can. I've actually made it part of who I am to always make connections. Oh, who said this? Oh, I should connect this person to this person. I've connected donors to each other. I have connected donors to other organizations, and sometimes competing organizations, because it really is about the donor. And that's how you build donor trust. And what normally happens is, oh, Tina, I'm going to still give a gift to your organization because I like you. And I'm sure there's smiles that I can see from here. I'm sure you have donors who make a gift to your organizations because they respect you and the work that you do. Anybody disagree? Okay. So, in praise of difficult women, there was a student in my class this past semester, and she was very passionate about empowering women, and she was actually an international student from Switzerland. So she bought me this book as a thank you. So 2 weeks later, I meet with a new prospective donor, and she tells me that she started her own company, and what she's most proud of her company is that it's mom-friendly. And how do we empower women to be all the, the things that we want to be without saying, hey, you have to be here 9 to 5. So her birthday, I found out, was only 2 weeks later. She shared a birthday with my dad, actually. So I also ordered this book, and I sent it to her. So after getting this book, she actually added me as a friend on Facebook. So now I'm getting to learn more about what she's interested in, what she's passionate about. I'm getting to know a little bit about her family. But because of this act of kindness or this act of joy, all of a sudden I know so much more about this donor, because that's something that she wanted to share with me. So the last book is called Besa, so Muslims Who Saved Jews in World War II. So I'm Albanian, I'm not Jewish. And there is there's a huge Jewish population in West Bloomfield. And all of them, everyone that I've met, they're very proud of their Jewish heritage. And so I said to myself, I'd like to share a piece of what my people, have done for the Jewish world. And so this book tells the story about all the Jews that went to Albania during World War II were saved. And it instantly builds trust. I remember meeting an Albanian nurse in one of our areas in the hospital, and she said to me, did you give X person this book? And I said, yes. What happened? Well, she talked about you as if you were her best friend, because she was touched. I mean, she even said, my friend Tina, because all those things that we talked about, she felt that connection. I was listening, I was respecting, and I was sharing a piece of myself. And I oftentimes think as fundraisers, we're so busy talking about the gift and stewarding the gift that maybe we're not as comfortable to share a little bit about who we are. And that authentic self, I think, is probably the most important thing that you can give a donor. Because at the end of the day, when they write a check, sure, they write a check to the organization, but they give it to you. And there's trust in that. So gift of time. So these are some of the things that I've done for some of my donors. Take them to an event they would want to go to. So I have a lot of donors who like wine. Plum Market does a lot of events. Some of the restaurants bring in winemakers from all over the world. Hey, I thought of you. Is this something that you would be interested in going with me? I would love for you to meet my husband. Or, hey, I know you're interested in wine. Maybe this is something that you would be interested in going. And I think you can do that for any sort of thing. Hey, the DEC is having an event. I know that this is an organization that you've mentioned in the past. I mentioned the handwritten note. We had an event for Henry Ford in Florida, and this particular person had never given a gift to our institution, writes a check and sends it in. So I write a handwritten note. I actually share a personal story related to his company, and I put my business card. And he calls me and he says, Tina, in the past 10 years, I don't think I've ever received a handwritten note. So thank you for that. And then I said, well, where would you like the money to go? He's like, oh, I completely trust you because of the story that you shared with me and being vulnerable in the story that you shared with me. I'm going to reference the happy birthday card. I thought it was personalized because somebody took the time, but I don't feel comfortable writing happy birthday cards to someone I don't know. It just seemed disingenuous to me. But what I do send is condolence cards, because I do remember what it feels like when you lose a loved one, and when somebody writes a meaningful note, I find it meaningful. So once again, we go back to the golden rule: treat people like you want to be treated. Another thing that I've noticed is that we get a lot of gifts in memory of. And what I've learned from my donors is that a lot of people make those kinds of gifts, but not a lot of people actually take the time to write the card. So there is this major donor in the community, and I did send a condolence card because he had given a gift in memory of at a previous time. And then when I asked another donor if he could make an introduction to this particular person, the donor responded, I'm happy to meet with her because I know she sent me a condolence card. So to get that feedback, within a 6-month period was actually really powerful to me, and I think it made me be even more proactive, in reading the paper and learning as much as possible about what happens in their donors' families. Attend an event for another charity that your donor supports. I go back to the statement, it really is about the donor. So there's a picture right here. There's 6 of us from the West Bloomfield Hospital. A donor does a golf event at a golf course in Ann Arbor, so it was quite the drive. But this organization meant so much to them that I talked with our marketing colleagues and said, can we buy a table? Can we do a sponsor? Can we do something? Because this is something that this donor cares about. So it took a lot of risk for me to use whatever political capital I had, but it was so important to show this donor that I was listening and I really cared about their involvement in the community. So we were able to go. And this is sort of doing things like this. You go from the handshaking to hugging to, by the way, I would love to invite all of you for golf if you're interested. Oh, and we have a great dinner here, so please, let me know when I can set you up, because this is thank you so much for doing this for us. Thank you so much for being here. Get to know their family. So because I teach the networking class, a lot of my donors are really passionate about what their kids are doing after high school graduation. So I oftentimes said, I'm happy to meet for coffee with your son or daughter. But it means so much to the donor because, their kids are central to their lives. And sometimes, I don't know this yet because my kid is 15 months old, but they tend to listen to others and not listen to their parents. So they really appreciate that. Help them solve a problem. I've also used political capital to get a donor an appointment for a service that we have a backlog. It probably takes 6 months, because that was something that was really important to them. And then the run a marathon. So we were raising money for a Game on Cancer program at Henry Ford. So we raised support for the hidden costs of cancer. And so Deb, who is one of my colleagues at West Bloomfield, for any donor who gave $10,000 or more, we had runners from the hospital who would run the full marathon. So it was her first time running a full marathon. But she was so inspired that people were giving to this cause that she said, I'm willing to train for it. And we actually had a team of 13. So people were really energized because they believed in the power of that program. And they were energized because they were feeling that they were making a difference. And the thought of you, all of these things are really the thought of you. So I always send articles. I try to be a big reader. So if I think of a donor, or if I'm listening to NPR and a particular subject comes up, I'm like, oh wow, so-and-so might be really interested in learning more about that. I tend to buy small things at the store, so I had a donor who loved lipstick. So at Marshall's checkout line, I think they had a lipstick mug. It was like $3. But giving it to her, I mean, I've never seen so much excitement about a $3 mug. So it's, once again, goes back to those 5 ideas. I mentioned that I went to INSEAD for my executive program. I wrote 32 postcards where my colleagues in the program were like, have you heard of text messaging and email and all these things, Tina? Because they were seeing me write 32 cards during break. But when I came back, people were calling and texting with pictures of my postcards saying, I haven't received a postcard in years. So like, it's a small thing, and it costs $1 or $2, but people want to be thought of. Because when my friends travel and I get a postcard, which is very rare because all I get in the mail is mostly bills, it lifts my spirit for that moment. And then once again, it's a low-cost thing. I also do send the text messages, when appropriate. Another thing that I've sent over text is video messages. So I've had donors who couldn't come to events or they couldn't come to lectures. So I would record for 2 or 3 minutes that the iMessages allows me to send text messages. And I say, wish you were here. And I look forward to seeing you next so I can tell you more about what happened. And it begins a conversation, and it's an opportunity then to schedule that next meeting. One main thing that I wanted to share with a thought of you, or the showing of gratitude, or showing that you care, is that if you genuinely believe that it is about the donor, then we should show our gratitude to the donor for being involved in the community. It's not just about the organization. So oftentimes, when I see that somebody's doing great work for an organization that really transforms the communities that we live, I will say, I'm a development officer at Henry Ford, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing this for our community, because that's something that I enjoy, or my family enjoys. We're doing system redesign at Henry Ford Health System, and we have a true north statement, and it says, we want to be the trusted partner in health. And I love that statement, because when you're a trusted partner in health, healthcare is only a piece of that. So if we really care about transforming the health of our community, then we really need to connect with one another and see what we own, what we're good at. And that means that other organizations have a piece to it. So when we show our gratitude overall, then you have other organizations that say, hey, I would love for you to talk to my colleague at Henry Ford because they're the experts in health. I'll give you an example of something that we're working on with the Jewish Federation. A big focus for them is teen suicide prevention, and a big focus for us is just that with our own patients. So our head of adolescent pediatric, our head of pediatric psychiatry, she would love to integrate mental health in pediatrics. So when you go to your pediatrician, there is a therapist right there in the office. Because I also learned that most doctors probably get 1 day, maybe even less, of training in mental health. So knowing that and knowing the need in the community, and by the way, there's also a need because there's less than 10,000 psychiatrists in the entire US, and the need is for 30,000 or more. So our pilot then is, we have a therapist in our Farmington Road location, and then the goal is to have a therapist in all of our pediatrics offices. So, we're partnering with the Jewish community because they're the experts in community engagement. So I believe, why should we focus on community engagement when they're the experts? And then we become the experts in the healthcare piece. So I'd love to build as many of those connections as possible so that we can divide and conquer. So those are the conversations that are happening. And I also share that with you because that's something that I'm passionate about now with a 15-month-old. Because if you do have anyone that is interested in that area, I'd love to chat with you and connect. So we have exercise number 2. So find a different partner. And think of a donor that you've had difficulty engaging. So I have reflection questions, but the idea is, what are some things that you can start doing to show that you can follow the golden rule? Okay. I'm going to give you guys about 1 more minute for the sake of time. Okay, I know you guys have a lot more thoughts, but perhaps you can continue the conversation during break. So I think we have 5 or 6 minutes, but does anyone want to share their story, and maybe the collective knowledge and energy in this room could help you come up with an action plan that you can take with this difficult donor? Or we don't have difficult donors. Please. Diane's behind you.
I was sharing with Priscilla, a donor, that possibly could leave a $1.25 million gift, but in talking with the donor, I'm listening to comments that are code for racist behaviors and thoughts and ideology, and I've met with him and his wife. I've talked with him on the phone. I've done my due diligence of trying to find places to help them make their gift, and I know we all encounter people who are not of the same persuasions, and so I'm stuck with trying to find their real passion, because it seems like I'm going around. And as I was sharing this with Priscilla, one of the things they've talked about is the Michigan Canine Association, and she was helpful to say, stick with animals, not people. Because then you don't hear the phrase, those people, or these communities or whatever. Everybody likes dogs. So I'm going to take that back and try it. I think that was a win for me. I can talk dog with this couple, and nobody's going to get hurt, probably. So thank you, Priscilla.
Way to go. Does anybody have any recommendations for Sandra? Right, Diane, behind you.
I just want to make sure I heard the comment clearly. Did you say the donor was racist or had some issues with racism? So, being African American and being a woman, I would challenge you to really lean into that conversation, because I know that there's certain rooms and certain environments that I can't go into, and if I do go into, the conversation would be really different. And so the only way that people will learn and become more accepting is if, when those comments are made, that you stand up, you be bold, and you dig deep to really lean into that conversation and go into that messiness to really advocate for people who may look different than you and may not have access.
Microphone. I'm with the Michigan Humane Society. So yes, a lot of people like dogs. But one of the things that we talked about were those people who were perhaps less attuned to philanthropy. Like they weren't, this was a new conversation, and getting your ability to get that meeting was a difficult situation. So they're suspect. What do you want? And you know that if you were able to engage and really meaningfully and compassionately listen to them, that you probably would help to fill the vacuum that they've created. So I think as fundraisers, many times it's the initial conversations, just getting your foot in the door to be able to sit down and have some fun with them and talk to them about making a difference with the money so that they can see their passion fulfilled. So that was one of the things that we landed on that we found mutually difficult.
Thank you. I guess maybe this is a time where I can say that sometimes, I know this is a hard decision for us as fundraisers because we have goals at the end of the year, but if a donor has views that don't align with the views of the organization and also your personal views, it's okay not to take a gift. I mean, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to do it. I mean, I don't think any of us get paid on commission. I mean, just a gentle reminder. So I think, you know, when we're in the business of wanting to change the world and we play a role in that, well, then we have to make decisions about doing the right thing. And sometimes the right thing is just to say no. So I have 2 more slides for you guys, and I know it's going to be break time. Is that okay? But all of these conversations, I think, will reflect with that. So these are my development basics, and I wanted to share them with you guys. So be focused every day on your belief in the impact that your organization creates, because together we can change the world. And the question that I ask myself when I deal with a donor is, do you fundraisers know how your organization changes the world? It's really hard to raise money for a health system if you're saying, hey, I need equipment. But it's really easy to raise money for a health system when you say, I'm part of this community, I've been to this ER, my family goes to this ER, my friends go to this ER, and doesn't my community deserve the best health care possible? And the donor all of a sudden goes, oh, okay, this is now just a job for you. Like you believe in the importance of the work that you do. And it's a shift that I think once you make it is really powerful. Make sure you know how your donor feels about you and the organization. You know, we talk about affinity, we talk about capacity, and sometimes we just like the donor so much when we know one of those things is missing that we continue the conversation. I'm not saying don't have the conversations and don't build relationships, but make sure you know that those 2 things are needed in order to advance a meaningful major gift relationship. And if the donor doesn't have that passion, it becomes really, really hard. Help the donor achieve what they want to achieve with their gift. Just a gentle reminder that it is about the donor and it's about making their philanthropic passions come true. Do all you can to make sure the donor feels like insiders and partners. In some organizations, it's really hard to get perhaps your executive director or your CEO to get involved and to really appreciate and understand fundraising, and I think smaller organizations have that challenge. But this is where what I would recommend is that you go and build relationships with the people, the grassroots level, the staff, the ones who have goals and passions for the organizations. They have ideas, because I think once you get them on your side, it's really easy to get people at the higher levels involved, because you have passion, and that's what the donors are looking for. And with time, if you can build those meaningful relationships internally, it becomes really easy to make that match between donor passion and organization's need. And then finally, focus on the donor and their needs, so build trust. So we shared some ideas today, and really focus on that golden rule. I mean, I can't really highlight that enough. And then for the final slide, I have homework. So really listen to your donors. So Lonnie mentioned the compassionate listening. Tuck what you hear and what you learn and act on that. I tell my students all the time, if somebody sends you a text message, somebody sends an email, if something comes out of their mouth, they want you to act on it. I mean, we don't just talk for the sake of talking. So compassionate listening allows you to really process and say, what is this donor trying to say to me? Or what is this person trying to say to me? Or where's my kid trying to say to me? And I think when we can act on those things, it shows that we're listening, and it shows that we care enough to do something about it. So my homework for you today is, for the donor that you guys were discussing, maybe try some of these strategies, and perhaps create that habit where you can do 2 or 3 random acts, as I call them, so a random act of joy every week. Make that part of what you do. Or perhaps every day you have 20 minutes where you save time in your schedule, so you can say, oh, I've really meant to send this donor this piece, or I meant to send this nurse this article that, and on a topic that's really passionate to them. And then I talked about the being your authentic self and how important that is. So it's okay to build meaningful relationships with donors, but don't forget that you are a fundraiser and part of your job is to make an ask. And I think once donors know that about you, you can build genuine relationships, very strong upper right quadrant relationships to move the organization's mission forward. And then please know that you do change the world. So please spend some time reflecting on that. Thank you. Thanks, Diane. Nice to hear. Okay.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, Tina, for a wonderful presentation and helping us understand how to deepen our relationships and build trust. I also want to thank Pantera for sponsoring this session, and we have a gift for you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. We have until 11 o'clock until the next session, so you have a break, and please, a reminder to complete the green evaluations before you leave today. If you leave them out front, you'll be able to be in a drawing for a gift card, so please do that. Thank you.